The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, the notification lighting up my dark bedroom like a bomb detonating in slow motion. I was already in bed exhausted from a double shift at the gallery when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost didn't check it. I should have trusted that instinct. My hands were steady when I first picked up the phone. They weren't steady 30 seconds later. The subject line read, Vance Family Beach House Reunion, July 15th to 17. You're invited. 3 exclamation points. Charlotte always used 3 exclamation points when she was performing enthusiasm. The sender was listed as Charlotte Vance, with that pretentious business email signature she'd designed, the one with her job title in a fancy font, and her professional headshot that probably cost $500. I opened it expecting the usual passive-aggressive family newsletter. What I found instead made my vision blur and my chest constrict like someone had wrapped steel cables around my ribs and pulled them tight. There was a guest list, beautifully formatted, color-coded by family branch, alphabetically organized within each section. Charlotte's name was at the top in elegant navy script. Mom's name, Margot Vance, sat right below it in the same refined lettering. Then came every cousin I'd grown up with. Jennifer, Michael, Patricia, Robert. Every aunt and uncle who showed up once a year to drink Dad's expensive wine and take photos for their Christmas cards. Every distant relative who couldn't remember my name half the time, but never missed a chance at a free beach vacation. 73 names total. I counted them 3 times, my finger shaking as it scrolled down the screen because I kept thinking I'd missed it. Kept thinking my name had to be there somewhere, maybe in a different section, maybe at the bottom, maybe formatted differently. But it wasn't missing. That would have been better. That would have been explainable. My name was there. Eleanor Marie Vance, right where it should have been alphabetically between Edward Vance and Emma Vance Cooper, our second cousins from Boston. Except someone had taken a digital red pen, the kind you use for editing documents, and drawn a thick, deliberate line straight through it. Through my first name. Through my middle name. Through my last name. The line was so thick, so aggressively applied that it had actually pixelated slightly at the edges, like whoever did it had pressed down hard on their screen or mouse, pouring physical force into a digital deletion. And next to my crossed-out name in that same blood-red color was a single word in parentheses, removed. Not unable to attend. Not regrets, not declined. Removed. Like I was a stain. Like I was a mistake. Like I was something that needed to be erased from the official record of the Vance family. My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the mattress. I picked it up with both hands this time because one hand wasn't enough to keep it steady. The email continued below the guest list, and every word felt like a small knife finding the spaces between my ribs. Dearest Vance family. It began because Charlotte always wrote like she was composing a letter to the Queen. It is with immense joy and heartfelt anticipation that I invite you to our annual family gathering at the beloved Vance Beach House, that sacred sanctuary where our precious father spent his happiest days. Sacred sanctuary. Precious father. She was using Dad's memory as set decoration for her performance. The email went on for 3 more paragraphs about honoring his legacy, about coming together in love and remembrance, about celebrating the bonds that make us a family. There were details about arrival times, sleeping arrangements, meal plans. Charlotte had organized a beach bonfire for Saturday night, a champagne brunch for Sunday morning, a memory-sharing circle where everyone would tell their favorite Thomas Vance stories. Not a single word about me. Not a single acknowledgement that I existed, that I'd been part of this family for 35 years, that I'd spent the last 6 months of Dad's life holding his hand while everyone else was too busy to show up. But the worst part, the part that made my breath catch and my vision tunnel, was the final paragraph. Please note that this year's gathering is particularly special as we will be discussing important family business regarding the future of the beach house and other estate matters. Your presence and input are invaluable as we make decisions that will shape the Vance legacy for generations to come. We are so grateful to have such a close-knit, loyal family during this transitional time. Estate matters, the beach house, decisions about Dad's legacy, and my name was crossed out, marked removed. I wasn't just uninvited to a party. I was being erased from decisions about my own father's property, from conversations about his estate, from the legacy he'd explicitly told me to fight for. My sister Charlotte's name was positioned at the very top of that list like a crown. My mother Margot's name sat there in smug solidarity right beneath it. Every random relative who'd spoken to Dad maybe 5 times in the past decade was invited to discuss his estate. But I, the daughter who'd bathed him when he couldn't do it himself, who'd held the basin when he vomited from chemo, who'd been there at 3 a.m. when the pain was so bad he cried, I was crossed out in red. The email's tone was sickeningly cheerful, weaponized joy designed to hurt more than any straightforward insult. Every exclamation point was a tiny act of violence. Every "we're so excited" was a door slamming in my face. I could practically hear Charlotte's voice dripping with fake sweetness as she'd typed this, probably sitting at her expensive desk in her expensive house, smiling as she drew that red line through my name. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a mistake. This was a declaration of war wrapped in party planning and tied with a bow of false sentiment. Charlotte wanted me to see this. She'd made sure of it by keeping my name on the list instead of just deleting it entirely. She wanted me to see myself being removed, wanted me to feel the humiliation of being publicly erased, wanted me to know that I didn't matter, had never mattered, would never matter. She wanted me to know that I had been removed from the Vance family just like that. If you're listening to this story and wondering how family can treat someone this way, please hit that like button and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Drop a comment below telling me if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most. Now let me take you back to where this all started, because the crossed-out name was just the final insult in a lifetime of being invisible. Let me take you back to the very beginning, to when I was 7 years old and first realized that my mother loved my sister more than she loved me. It was Christmas morning, and Charlotte, who was 12 at the time, had gotten a brand new bicycle with pink streamers and a wicker basket. I'd gotten a set of crayons and a coloring book. When I asked Mom why Charlotte got something so much bigger, she smiled that tight smile of hers and said, "Charlotte is older, sweetheart. When you're her age, maybe you'll get something nice too." But when I turned 12, I got a sweater. Charlotte, who was 17 by then, got a car. That was the pattern of my entire childhood. Charlotte got the lead in the school play. I got a spot in the chorus. Charlotte got a Sweet 16 party with 200 guests. I got dinner at Applebee's with 3 friends. Charlotte got a full ride to Stanford. I got a partial scholarship to a state school and had to work 3 jobs to cover the rest. I told myself it was because Charlotte was more talented, more beautiful, more everything. I learned to make myself small, to not ask for too much, to be grateful for whatever attention came my way. By the time I was in high school, I'd perfected the art of being invisible. I got good grades, but not too good. I had friends, but not too many. I never caused problems, never made waves, never demanded anything. Dad was the only one who seemed to see me. Thomas Vance was a gentleman, quieter than Mom, less flashy than Charlotte. He worked as an architect, designing homes that were both beautiful and practical. He taught me to see the world through an artist's eyes, to appreciate the way light fell through windows, the way colors complemented each other. When I told him I wanted to study art, he was the only one who didn't laugh. Mom had scoffed. "Art, Eleanor, be realistic. You need a real career. Look at Charlotte, she's going into marketing. That's a career." But Dad had squeezed my hand under the table, and later, when we were alone, he'd said, "Follow your passion, Ellie. Life's too short to do anything else." So I did. I majored in art history with a minor in studio art. I wasn't brilliant, but I was dedicated. I spent hours in museums studying brushstrokes and composition. I filled sketchbooks with drawings of buildings, people, landscapes. After graduation, I moved to the city and got a job at a small gallery. The pay was terrible, but I loved being surrounded by beauty every day. Charlotte, meanwhile, had become exactly what Mom wanted her to be. She worked at a prestigious marketing firm, married a successful lawyer named Gregory, bought a house in an exclusive neighborhood. Her Instagram was a carefully curated highlight reel of perfection. Mom showed those photos to everyone she met, glowing with pride. When people asked about me, Mom would say, "Oh, Eleanor works at a little art gallery. It's nice that she has a hobby." A hobby. That's what my entire career was to her. But Dad never diminished what I did. He visited the gallery regularly, always on days when he knew I'd be working. He'd walk slowly through the exhibits, studying each piece, and then he'd find me and we'd talk about art for hours. Those conversations were the highlight of my weeks. I remember one afternoon, I must have been 26 at the time, Dad came to the gallery looking different somehow. Tired. When I asked if he was okay, he waved me off. "Just getting old, Ellie. Nothing to worry about." But something in his voice made me uneasy. 3 weeks later, he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The world stopped. I remember sitting in the hospital conference room as the oncologist explained the prognosis. 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive treatment. The words washed over me like ice water. Dad sat there holding Mom's hand, his face pale but composed. Charlotte was checking her phone. After the doctor left, Dad looked at each of us. "I want to fight this," he said. "I'm not ready to go yet." "Of course, Daddy," Charlotte said, finally putting her phone down. "We'll find the best doctors. Money's no object." Mom nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "We'll get through this together, as a family." I couldn't speak. I just reached for Dad's other hand and held it tight. The next 6 months were hell. Dad started chemotherapy immediately. The treatments made him violently ill. He lost weight, lost his hair, lost the color in his face. But he never lost his spirit, at least not at first. I rearranged my entire life around his treatment schedule. I switched to part-time at the gallery so I could drive him to appointments. I meal prepped foods that might be easier on his stomach. I researched clinical trials and alternative treatments. I was at the hospital so often that the nurses started greeting me by name. Charlotte visited twice in the first month. Both times she stayed less than 20 minutes. The first visit she brought flowers and took several photos of herself holding Dad's hand, which promptly appeared on her Instagram with a caption about family strength in difficult times. The second visit she spent the entire time on a work call mouthing sorry at Dad while she paced in the hallway. Mom was there more often than Charlotte, but her presence was performative. She'd sit by Dad's bed with a martyred expression, sighing heavily, making sure everyone knew how hard this was for her. She complained constantly about the hospital food, the uncomfortable chairs, the depressing atmosphere. She never asked what she could do to help. She just wanted credit for showing up. One afternoon, about 2 months into treatment, Dad had a particularly bad reaction to his chemo. He was throwing up, shaking, barely conscious. I was holding a basin for him, wiping his face with a cool cloth, trying to keep him comfortable. Mom had gone to get coffee. Charlotte had been scheduled to visit but canceled, citing a client emergency. When Dad finally stopped being sick, he lay back against the pillows exhausted. His eyes were watery, but he focused on me. "You're the only one who really shows up," he whispered. "You know that, right?" I shook my head, uncomfortable. "Mom's here. Charlotte cares she's just busy." "Eleanor." Dad's voice was firm despite his weakness. "Stop making excuses for them. I've watched you do that your entire life. Charlotte doesn't care. She never has. And your mother loves the idea of having a sick husband more than she loves actually taking care of one. You're the only one who loves me enough to see me like this." Tears streamed down my face. "Don't say that. They love you." "Maybe," Dad said, "but not the way you do. Not honestly. Not without expecting something in return." He closed his eyes. "Promise me something, Ellie. Promise me you'll stop shrinking yourself for people who don't appreciate you. Promise me you'll take up space." I promised, even though I had no idea how to keep that promise. The chemotherapy wasn't working. After 4 months, the tumors had actually grown. Dad's oncologist recommended stopping treatment and moving to palliative care. Dad agreed. He was tired of being sick from the treatment. He wanted whatever time he had left to be peaceful. We set up a hospice room at home. I took a leave of absence from the gallery to be his primary caregiver. The hospice nurses taught me how to administer pain medication, how to watch for signs of distress, how to keep him comfortable. I learned quickly. Charlotte visited once during this period. She breezed in wearing a Chanel suit, stayed for 45 minutes, cried beautifully into a handkerchief, and left because she had dinner reservations. Before she left, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You're doing such an amazing job taking care of Daddy," she said, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. "I just feel terrible that I can't be here more. Work is so demanding, but I know he's in good hands with you. You were always the nurturing one." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that being nurturing was code for being forgettable, for being the one who did the work while others took the credit. But I just nodded and said, "He'd love to see you more if you can find time." She smiled that perfect smile. "Of course, I'll try to come by next week." She didn't. Dad's condition deteriorated rapidly. He was sleeping most of the time now, waking only for brief periods. During one of those wakeful moments about 3 weeks before he died, he asked me to help him sit up. He wanted to look out the window at the garden. "Ellie," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you about something important, about the house." The beach house, the place where we'd spent every summer of my childhood, where Dad had taught me to swim, where we'd collected shells, where we'd watched sunsets from the porch. I hadn't been there in years. Charlotte had essentially taken it over, using it for her own vacations and social events. "What about it?" I asked. "It's yours," Dad said. "I've made legal arrangements. There's a codicil to my will. The house goes to you, not Charlotte, not to be split between you, just to you." I was shocked. "Dad, that's not necessary. Charlotte and I can share it." He shook his head, wincing at the movement. "Charlotte will try to sell it the second I'm gone. She doesn't love that place the way we do. She sees it as an asset, not a home. But you understand what it means. You'll keep it alive." He grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Listen to me carefully. Charlotte is going to fight this. She's going to try to take it from you. Your mother will help her. They're going to claim you manipulated me, that you took advantage of my illness. They're going to make you feel guilty for accepting what I'm giving you." "Dad, stop," I said, crying now. "You're scaring me." "I'm preparing you," he insisted. "Eleanor, you have spent your entire life letting them make you small. You've let them walk over you, dismiss you, erase you. When I'm gone, they're going to try to erase you from this family's history, from my history. Don't let them. The house is yours. Fight for it. Promise me you'll fight for it." I promised through my tears, even though I didn't fully understand what he was asking of me. Dad also told me other things during that conversation. He told me that he'd always known Mom favored Charlotte, and it had caused countless fights between them over the years. He told me that he'd set up his estate carefully with protections in place because he didn't trust Charlotte to handle things fairly. He told me that he'd left detailed instructions with his lawyer, a man named Daniel Cross, and that I should contact Daniel as soon as possible after his death. "Don't wait," Dad emphasized. "Call him the day after the funeral. Charlotte is going to move fast, and you need to be faster." I wrote down Daniel's name and number, tucked the paper into my wallet, and tried to absorb everything Dad was telling me. But it felt surreal, like preparing for a war I didn't know was coming. 3 days later, Dad slipped into unconsciousness. The hospice nurse said it would be soon, maybe hours, maybe a day or two at most. I called Charlotte and Mom, who were both at home. They arrived within an hour, both dressed in black, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. We sat around Dad's bed in silence. Mom cried quietly. Charlotte stared at her phone occasionally, looking up to check if anything had changed. I held Dad's hand and whispered to him, telling him it was okay to let go, that I loved him, that I'd keep my promises. He died at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning. One moment he was breathing shallow and labored, and the next moment he wasn't. The silence that followed was profound. I sat there still holding his hand, unable to process that he was really gone. Mom let out a theatrical sob and collapsed into a chair. Charlotte stood up, took a deep breath, and said, "I'll call the funeral home." She was on her phone before Dad's body was even cold, making arrangements, being efficient. I heard her on a call with the funeral director, her voice brisk and businesslike. "Yes, we'd like your platinum package. Nothing but the best for our father. Can we do Saturday for the service? I need to make sure my colleagues can attend." I wanted to throw something at her. Dad had been dead for less than 10 minutes, and she was already performing for an audience that hadn't even been invited yet. The funeral was exactly what Charlotte wanted, and nothing like what Dad would have chosen. It was held at an expensive funeral home with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. There were hundreds of white roses, Dad's least favorite flower. A string quartet played somber classical music. Charlotte had hired a professional photographer to document the event. The service itself was a spectacle. Charlotte delivered a eulogy that should have won awards for fiction. She talked about how she and Dad had been so close, how they'd spent hours discussing life and philosophy, how he'd been her best friend and mentor. She cried at all the right moments, her makeup never smudging. People whispered about what a devoted daughter she was. I sat in the front row, numb and disconnected, and listened to my sister rewrite history. Mom squeezed my hand at one point and whispered, "Charlotte is being so strong. We should all try to be more like her." I gave the eulogy I'd prepared, talking about Dad's love of architecture and art, about the quiet moments we'd shared, about his kindness. My voice cracked several times. I wasn't performing. I was breaking. When I finished, people applauded politely, but I could tell they were more moved by Charlotte's theatrical version than my honest one. At the reception afterward, I overheard Charlotte talking to a group of Dad's colleagues. "It's been so hard," she was saying, dabbing at her eyes. "I practically lived at the hospital these past few months. I just couldn't bear the thought of him being alone. But at least I was there for him at the end." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. After the funeral, things moved quickly. Charlotte announced that she was the executor of Dad's estate. She'd apparently been appointed months earlier during one of her brief hospital visits. She gathered Mom and me in Dad's study and laid out her plans. "I've been reviewing Dad's assets," she said, spreading papers across his desk. "The estate is more complicated than I expected. There are properties, investments, the business assets from his firm. It's going to take months to sort through everything." "What about the beach house?" I asked, remembering Dad's warning. Charlotte's smile didn't reach her eyes. "What about it? Is it part of the estate? Are we going to keep it?" "That's still being determined," Charlotte said smoothly. "There are tax implications, maintenance costs, insurance. It might make more sense to sell, but don't worry about it, Eleanor. This is complex legal stuff. I'll handle it." Something in her tone made my stomach turn. "I want to see Dad's will." Charlotte's expression flickered with annoyance before settling back into fake patience. "Of course you do. I'll get you a copy. But Eleanor, this is really my area of expertise. Dad chose me as executor because he knew I could handle these things. You should focus on grieving, on taking care of yourself. You look exhausted, by the way. Maybe you should take a vacation." Mom nodded in agreement. "Charlotte's right, dear. You've been running yourself ragged taking care of your father. Let Charlotte handle the business matters. She's good at this sort of thing." I felt the old familiar feeling of being dismissed, pushed aside, made small. But I remembered Dad's words. "Fight for it. Don't let them erase you." "I want to see the will," I repeated, "and I want to be included in all decisions about the estate." Charlotte's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw cold calculation in her eyes. "Of course," she said. "I'll make sure you're kept informed." But she didn't keep me informed. Days turned into weeks, and whenever I tried to contact Charlotte about the estate, I got vague responses. She was busy with lawyers. The paperwork was complicated. Everything was in process. Don't worry. I tried calling Dad's law firm, but they referred me back to Charlotte as the executor. I tried asking Mom for help, but she just said, "Eleanor, stop being so paranoid. Charlotte is taking care of everything. Why are you making this difficult?" I felt myself slipping into old patterns. Backing down. Accepting my place. Believing that maybe I was being paranoid, maybe I was making things difficult, maybe I should just trust Charlotte. But then I remembered the piece of paper in my wallet. Daniel Cross. Dad's lawyer. The one person Dad had told me to contact. I found Daniel's number and called him on a Tuesday afternoon about 6 weeks after Dad's funeral. A secretary answered and put me through. "Miss Vance," Daniel said warmly. "I've been expecting your call. Actually, I've been hoping for your call. Why don't you come to my office tomorrow? I think we need to talk." The next morning, I took a personal day from the gallery and drove to Daniel's office in downtown. He worked out of a modest but professional suite, nothing like the gleaming glass towers where Charlotte's lawyers probably worked. Daniel himself was in his early 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Your father spoke very highly of you," he said as we settled into chairs in his conference room. He was very concerned about what would happen after his death. That's why he hired me separately from the firm that handled his business matters. "I don't understand," I said. Daniel pulled out a thick file. "Your father didn't trust your sister. He loved her, but he didn't trust her judgment when it came to money and property. He was particularly worried about the beach house. He knew Charlotte would try to sell it." He opened the file and showed me documents. The first was Dad's will, the official one that had been filed with the probate court. The second was a codicil and amendment dated 3 months before Dad died. "Read this section," Daniel said, pointing to a paragraph. I read it slowly. The beach house at 247 Coastal Highway was to be given to Eleanor Marie Vance, free and clear, separate from the rest of the estate. It was not to be sold or liquidated to satisfy any debts or obligations. It was mine. Charlotte never mentioned this, I said, my hands shaking. I'm sure she didn't, Daniel said dryly. The codicil was filed properly, but somehow it got separated from the main will in the probate filing. I've been trying to contact your sister's legal team to rectify this, but they've been stonewalling me. Why would they do that? Daniel leaned back in his chair. Because your sister has already started the process of selling the beach house. She created an LLC 2 weeks after your father died, transferred the house into the LLC's ownership, and is currently in negotiations with a development company. If the sale goes through before we can stop it, it will be much harder to unwind. I felt like I'd been punched. She can't do that. The house is mine. Legally, you're correct, but your sister is the executor, which gives her broad powers to manage estate assets. She's claiming that the beach house needs to be liquidated to cover estate taxes and debts. It's a lie. Your father's estate is solvent. There's plenty of money to cover all obligations. But if we don't act fast, she's going to complete this sale, and then we'll be fighting for years to get your property back. I sat there trying to process everything. Dad had been right. Charlotte was trying to steal from me. She was trying to erase me. What can I do? I asked, and I was proud that my voice didn't shake. Daniel smiled. We fight. But I need to be honest with you, Eleanor. This is going to get ugly. Your sister has resources connections and a ruthless streak. She's not going to give up easily. If you decide to pursue this, you need to be prepared for a war. I thought about Dad about his final words to me. Don't let them erase you. Fight for it. Let's go to war, I said. Daniel nodded approvingly. Good. First thing we need to do is file an emergency petition with the probate court to halt any sale of the beach house pending resolution of the codicil. We'll also need to challenge your sister's management of the estate. To do that, we need evidence of misconduct. What kind of evidence? Financial irregularities, self-dealing. Anything that suggests she's putting her interests ahead of the estate's interests. Do you have access to any of your father's financial records? I shook my head. Charlotte has everything. Then we need to get creative, Daniel said. He picked up his phone and made a call. Lucas, it's Daniel Cross. I need your help on a case. He glanced at me. Lucas Mendez, best private investigator in the state. If there's dirt to find on your sister, he'll find it. 2 days later, I met Lucas at a coffee shop downtown. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. He had a laptop bag slung over one shoulder and a confidence that immediately put me at ease. Daniel told me about your situation, Lucas said after we'd ordered coffee. I did some preliminary research on your sister. She's got a spotless public image, but there are some interesting patterns in her business dealings. What kind of patterns? Lucas pulled out his laptop. Your sister has worked as an executor or trustee for several other estates over the years, mostly for family friends or business associates of your father. In 3 of those cases, there were irregularities. Properties sold below market value to companies that Charlotte had connections to. Estate assets that mysteriously depreciated right before probate closed. Nothing illegal enough to trigger serious investigations, but enough to suggest a pattern. She's done this before, I said slowly. That's my working theory. Your father's estate is just the latest and probably the biggest. The beach house alone is worth at least $2 million, maybe more, depending on current market conditions. If Charlotte can flip it quickly to her developer friends, she stands to make a significant finder's fee or kickback. I felt sick. How do we prove it? That's where I come in, Lucas said. I need you to think hard about anything your sister might have said or done in recent weeks that struck you as odd. Any conversations, any documents you might have seen, anything at all. I thought back over the past few weeks, trying to remember details through the fog of grief. Then something clicked. The study. After the funeral, Charlotte was spreading papers across Dad's desk. She had files, financial statements. She was so focused on them that she barely noticed when I came in. Did you see what was in those files? Not clearly, but I remember seeing letterhead from a company. Something like Coastal Properties or Coastal Development. I thought it was strange because Dad never worked with developers. He designed homes for individual clients. Lucas typed rapidly on his laptop. Coastal Development Group, high-end property development company based in the city. They specialize in tearing down old beach houses and building luxury condos. He turned the screen toward me. The CEO is a man named Richard Hartley. Does that name mean anything to you? I studied the photo on the website. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. I'm not sure. He's married to Charlotte's college roommate, Jessica Hartley. They've been close friends for years. In fact, Charlotte and Gregory are godparents to the Hartley's daughter. The pieces clicked into place. Charlotte wasn't just selling the beach house. She was selling it to her friend's husband, probably for below market value, probably with some kind of kickback arrangement. That's fraud, I said. Yes, Lucas agreed. But we need to prove it. Daniel has filed the emergency petition to halt the sale, but we need more ammunition. I need to dig deeper into Charlotte's finances, into this LLC she created, into her communications with Coastal Development Group. The problem is most of that information is protected or privileged. So what do we do? Lucas smiled. We look for mistakes. Everyone makes them, especially when they're in a hurry. Charlotte moved fast after your father died. Fast usually means sloppy. I'll find the mistakes. Over the next 2 weeks, Lucas worked his magic. He discovered that the LLC Charlotte had created had paperwork errors that made its ownership of the beach house questionable. He found emails between Charlotte and Richard Hartley discussing the property sale before Dad's estate had even entered probate, which suggested premeditation and possible collusion. He uncovered tax documents showing that Charlotte had failed to pay property taxes on the beach house for the past year, despite it being an estate asset she was responsible for maintaining. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Lucas had been monitoring Charlotte's social media and public communications, looking for any slip-ups. One evening, he called me, excitement in his voice. Check your email. I'm sending you an audio file. Listen to it. I opened the file on my laptop and pressed play. It was a voicemail recording Charlotte's voice, unmistakable. Jess, it's me. I know you and Richard are nervous about the beach house deal, but stop worrying. Everything is locked down. I've got Mom on my side, and Eleanor is too much of a pushover to cause problems. She's been a doormat her whole life. She's not suddenly going to grow a spine now. Trust me, by the time she realizes what's happening, the sale will be done and there's nothing she can do about it. Richard is going to love that property. It's worth at least 2.5, but I told him we'd let it go for 1.8 as long as he kicks back $200,000 to the LLC, which of course I control. Mom and I will split the money and poor little Eleanor will never even know what she missed out on. Jess laughed on the recording. You're terrible, Charlotte. Your poor sister. Please. Eleanor has never contributed anything to this family. She's the one who got to play saint taking care of Dad while I was building an actual career. She should be grateful we're not asking her to chip in for the funeral costs. Anyway, I've got to run. Drinks next week. The recording ended. I sat there staring at my computer screen, feeling like my chest had been cracked open. It wasn't that I was surprised by Charlotte's contempt. Some part of me had always known she looked down on me. But hearing it stated so bluntly, hearing her laugh about stealing from me, hearing her reduce my care for our dying father to playing saint, it was devastating. I also felt something else, though. Anger. Clean, pure, righteous anger. Not the messy, guilt-ridden anger I usually felt when Charlotte hurt me, but something clearer and stronger. She'd called me a doormat. She'd bet everything on me being too weak to fight back. She'd bet wrong. Where did you get this recording? I asked Lucas when I called him back. Let's just say Charlotte's digital security is not as tight as it should be. Her voicemails are synced to her cloud storage and her passwords are depressingly easy to guess. This particular voicemail was left 2 weeks ago. She never deleted it. Can we use it in court? That's a question for Daniel, but I think so. It's evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and intent to deprive you of your rightful inheritance. It's pretty damning. Daniel agreed. When I met with him the next day and played the recording, his face lit up. This is exactly what we need. This shows clear intent to defraud the estate and to violate the terms of your father's will. With this, we can not only stop the sale of the beach house, but potentially have Charlotte removed as executor entirely. What happens then? The court will appoint an independent executor, probably a professional fiduciary. They'll review all of Charlotte's actions since your father's death, unwind any improper transactions, and ensure the estate is distributed according to the actual terms of the will, including the codicil. You'll get your beach house, and Charlotte will likely face consequences for her misconduct. It sounded too good to be true. What kind of consequences? Daniel's expression turned serious. At minimum, she'll be removed as executor and potentially barred from serving in that capacity for anyone else. Depending on what else we find, there could be civil penalties requirement to pay restitution, maybe even criminal charges if the fraud is egregious enough. I don't want to destroy her. I said, surprising myself. I just want what's mine. Daniel studied me carefully. Eleanor, you need to understand something. When we file this motion and submit this evidence, we're not just attacking Charlotte's handling of your father's estate. We're exposing her entire pattern of behavior, the other estates Lucas found irregularities in. Those families might start asking questions. Charlotte's professional reputation will be destroyed. Her firm might fire her. Her friends might abandon her. This will have consequences far beyond just the beach house. She did this to herself, I said. I didn't make her steal. I didn't make her call me a doormat. I didn't make her bet that I'd be too weak to fight back. Daniel smiled slightly. No, you didn't. I just want to make sure you're prepared for what comes next. Because when Charlotte realizes what's happening, she's going to come at you with everything she has. She's going to try to destroy your reputation to paint you as the villain to turn your family and friends against you. Are you ready for that? I thought about Dad, about his hand in mine, about his final request. Don't let them erase you. I'm ready, I said. Daniel filed the emergency motion that afternoon. Within 24 hours, all transactions related to Dad's estate were frozen pending a court hearing. Charlotte couldn't sell the beach house. She couldn't move any assets. Everything was locked down. Charlotte called me that evening, and I'd never heard her sound so angry. What the hell did you do? She shouted, not even bothering with a greeting. You filed a motion against me. You're trying to get me removed as executor. Have you lost your mind? I'm claiming what Dad left me, I said, keeping my voice calm. The beach house is mine, Charlotte. You know that. The beach house is an estate asset that needs to be liquidated to cover expenses, she shot back. I'm doing my fiduciary duty. By selling it below market value to your friend's husband and taking a kickback, that's not fiduciary duty, Charlotte. That's theft. There was a long silence. Then Charlotte's voice turned cold. I don't know what you think you know, but you're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this, Eleanor. I promise you that. I already have enough regrets, I said. Not fighting for myself sooner is one of them, but I'm done regretting. I'm done being a doormat. A doormat. Charlotte laughed harshly. Is that what this is about? You're upset because you finally heard what everyone really thinks of you. So she knew about the recording. Lucas had been right. Charlotte's digital security was terrible. No, I said. I'm upset because my sister is a thief and a fraud, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. I hung up before she could respond. The next few days were chaos. Charlotte went on the offensive immediately. She called every relative we had, spinning a story about how I was trying to steal the beach house through manipulation and lies. She posted on social media about the pain of being betrayed by family. She gave an interview to a local news blog about elder abuse and how I'd taken advantage of Dad in his final days. Mom called me crying. Eleanor, what are you doing? Charlotte says you're trying to destroy her. Is this about money? Are you really so greedy that you'd tear this family apart? Mom, Charlotte is lying to you. She's been stealing from Dad's estate. I have proof. Proof? What proof? Charlotte would never steal from your father. She loved him. Did she? I asked. Because I was the one who was there when he was dying, Mom. I was the one holding his hand. Charlotte visited twice. Twice. And you want me to believe she loved him? Mom was silent for a moment. Then she said, You always were jealous of Charlotte, ever since you were little. This is just more of the same, isn't it? You can't stand that she's successful, that people admire her, so you're trying to drag her down. That hurt more than I expected. If that's what you think, then I guess we have nothing more to talk about. Eleanor, wait! I hung up. Then I turned off my phone because it wouldn't stop ringing. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Daniel prepared meticulously, organizing all our evidence into a clear narrative of Charlotte's misconduct. Lucas continued digging and found even more damaging information. It turned out Charlotte had not only failed to pay property taxes on the beach house, but had also let the homeowner's insurance lapse. If there had been a fire or storm damage during that time, the house would have been a total loss with no way to recover the value. This shows gross negligence at best, intentional sabotage at worst, Daniel explained. A competent executor would never let insurance lapse on a valuable property. Charlotte either didn't care or actively wanted the house to be vulnerable. We also discovered that Charlotte had been billing Dad's estate for expenses that were clearly personal. Lunches at expensive restaurants, shopping trips, even a weekend spa getaway. She'd categorized them all as estate management expenses. It was brazen. The day before the hearing, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. It was Mom. She stood in my doorway, looking older than I remembered, her perfect makeup slightly smudged, her designer clothes rumpled. "Can I come in?" she asked. She'd say. I stepped aside and let her enter. We sat in my small living room, awkward and silent. "Charlotte showed me the motion," Mom said finally. "And the evidence you're submitting. The recording, the financial records, all of it." "And?" I asked, not sure what I was hoping for. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Mom admitted. "Charlotte swears she did nothing wrong, that this is all a misunderstanding, that you're twisting innocent actions into something sinister. But Eleanor, some of those expenses, I know they're not legitimate. I was with Charlotte on that spa weekend. She told me she was paying for it herself." "She billed Dad's estate for it," I said, "for $2,000. Mom closed her eyes. "Your father always said Charlotte had flexible ethics. I told him he was being too harsh, that she was just ambitious. Maybe I was wrong." "Mom," I said carefully, "this isn't just about the spa weekend or the other expenses. Charlotte tried to steal the beach house. She was going to sell it and pocket the money, knowing that Dad had left it to me. She called me a doormat and laughed about how I'd never fight back." "I know," Mom whispered. "I heard the recording." We sat in silence for a long moment. "Why?" I asked finally. "Why did you always choose her over me? What did I do that was so wrong?" Mom looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You didn't do anything wrong, Eleanor. That's the problem. You were always so easy. You never demanded anything, never caused problems, never needed me. Charlotte was different. She was high maintenance, always needing attention, always needing validation. It was easier to give her what she wanted than to deal with the tantrums if I didn't. So you abandoned me because I wasn't difficult enough." "I didn't abandon you. I took you for granted. I assumed you'd always be okay because you always seemed okay. And your father doted on you, so I told myself you didn't need me too." "I did need you," I said, crying now. "I needed my mother, but you were never there." "I know," Mom said. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. It wasn't enough. An apology couldn't undo 35 years of neglect and favoritism. But it was something." "Are you going to testify against Charlotte?" I asked. Mom looked torn. "She's my daughter." "So am I." Mom stood up, gathering her purse. "I need to think. The hearing is tomorrow. I'll make my decision by then." She left, and I sat in my apartment feeling more alone than ever. The hearing the next morning was held in a windowless courtroom that smelled like old paper and furniture polish. Charlotte arrived with her high-powered attorney, a sharp-faced woman in an Armani suit who looked like she ate opposing counsel for breakfast. Charlotte herself looked impeccable, dressed in a conservative navy suit with her hair pulled back, the picture of a responsible fiduciary wrongly accused. I sat with Daniel wearing the best dress I owned, feeling underdressed and outmatched. The judge was a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Morrison. She reviewed the documents Daniel had submitted, her expression inscrutable. Charlotte's attorney went first, arguing that I was a disgruntled family member making spurious accusations against a devoted sister who was doing her best to manage a complex estate. "Miss Eleanor Vance has produced no credible evidence of wrongdoing," the attorney stated. "The so-called irregularities she cites are simple administrative delays and judgment calls that any executor might make. This motion is nothing more than a transparent attempt to seize control of valuable assets that Miss Charlotte Vance is properly managing." Then it was Daniel's turn. He systematically presented our evidence: the codicil giving me the beach house, the LLC created to hide the property, the emails with Richard Hartley planning the sale before probate opened, the failed tax payments and lapsed insurance, the personal expenses billed to the estate, and finally the recording. When Charlotte's voice played in the courtroom, calling me a doormat, laughing about stealing from the estate, I watched my sister's face turn white. Her attorney tried to object, claiming the recording was obtained illegally, but Judge Morrison overruled her. "The recording was obtained from the defendant's own cloud storage account," Daniel explained. "Miss Vance made no attempt to secure this information, and the investigator acted within legal bounds." After the recording ended, Judge Morrison looked at Charlotte with barely concealed disgust. "Miss Vance, do you have any explanation for these statements?" Charlotte's attorney leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. Charlotte shook her head slightly, then spoke. Your Honor, I was venting to a friend. I said things I shouldn't have, but I never actually intended to defraud the estate or my sister. The sale to Coastal Development was going to be at fair market value. The kickback she mentioned was a joke. A joke, Judge Morrison repeated flatly. Yes, Your Honor, a joke in poor taste, but a joke nonetheless. Judge Morrison looked at more documents. And the personal expenses billed to the estate, the spa weekend, the restaurant meals, the shopping trips, were those also jokes? Charlotte's composure cracked slightly. Those were legitimate business expenses related to estate management. A spa weekend is estate management. I was under tremendous stress dealing with my father's death and the complexities of the estate. I needed to maintain my health to properly fulfill my duties. It was a weak argument, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. Judge Morrison turned to me. Miss Eleanor Vance, I've read your father's codicil. It clearly states that the beach house at 247 Coastal Highway is to be yours, free and clear. Why do you think your sister ignored this provision? I glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. Your Honor, my sister has always viewed me as inferior. She's spent our entire lives dismissing me, erasing me, treating me like I don't matter. When my father made it clear that he valued me, that he trusted me with his most beloved property, she couldn't accept it. She had to take it away from me to maintain her sense of superiority. That's not true, Charlotte burst out. Your Honor, my sister is twisting everything. She's always been jealous of me, always. Miss Vance, Judge Morrison said sharply. You'll have your chance to speak. Right now I'm talking to your sister. She turned back to me. Continue. There's nothing more to say, Your Honor. My father left me the beach house because he knew I would honor his memory there. He knew Charlotte would sell it. He was right. I'm just asking for what's rightfully mine. Judge Morrison reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. I've heard enough. The evidence presented today shows a clear pattern of misconduct by the executor, Miss Charlotte Vance. The personal expenses billed to the estate are inappropriate and constitute self-dealing. The failure to pay property taxes and maintain insurance on a valuable estate asset shows gross negligence. The planning to sell the property in violation of the decedent's clearly stated wishes, particularly to a friend, at a below-market price, with an apparent kickback arrangement, constitutes fraud. Charlotte made a small sound, almost a whimper. Effective immediately, I am removing Charlotte Vance as executor of the Thomas Vance estate. I am appointing the law firm of Morrison & Associates to serve as independent executor. They will review all transactions Miss Charlotte Vance made during her tenure and unwind any that are improper. The beach house at 247 Coastal Highway is hereby awarded to Eleanor Vance as clearly specified in the decedent's codicil. Miss Charlotte Vance is ordered to transfer all estate assets and documentation to the new executor within 48 hours. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Charlotte's attorney immediately began arguing for an appeal, but Judge Morrison was unmoved. Miss Vance, you have the right to appeal any decision I make, but the stay I've issued remains in effect, and Miss Eleanor Vance is the legal owner of the beach house as of this moment. If you set foot on that property without her permission, you will be trespassing. It was over. I'd won. Charlotte stood up abruptly and stormed out of the courtroom, her attorney hurrying after her. I sat there stunned, unable to quite believe what had just happened. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. Congratulations, Eleanor. You fought for yourself and you won. But the war wasn't over, not by a long shot. Over the next few days, Charlotte unleashed hell. She went to every media outlet that would listen, painting herself as the victim of a vindictive sister and a biased judge. She gave tearful interviews about how I'd manipulated Dad in his final days, how I'd seduced him away from his real family, how I'd stolen everything from her. The story went viral on social media. Half the internet thought I was a conniving gold digger. The other half thought Charlotte was a spoiled rich girl getting her comeuppance. My phone number got leaked somehow, and I received hundreds of calls, some supportive, most threatening. Someone found out where I worked and left a 1-star review of the gallery online. Employs thieves and liars. Eleanor Vance is a disgrace who stole from her dying father. My boss called me in for a conversation about whether my legal troubles were affecting the gallery's reputation. I wanted to curl up in a ball and disappear. This was exactly what Daniel had warned me about. Charlotte was destroying my reputation, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But then something unexpected happened. Lucas called me with news. 3 of the other families whose estates Charlotte managed have filed formal complaints. They've been investigating their own estate settlements and found irregularities similar to what she did to your dad. One family is considering criminal charges for embezzlement. Are you serious? Dead serious. Charlotte's house of cards is collapsing. Her firm put her on indefinite leave pending an internal investigation. Her husband Gregory just moved out. And get this, Richard Hartley is cooperating with the DA's office. He's claiming Charlotte approached him with the beach house deal, not the other way around, and he's willing to testify about the kickback arrangement. Charlotte was going down. Not just losing the executor position, but truly going down. Her career, her marriage, her reputation, all of it was crumbling. I should have felt triumphant. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I felt hollow. 2 weeks after the hearing, Charlotte showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her perfect makeup streaked with old tears. This wasn't the polished, powerful Charlotte I'd known my entire life. This was someone broken. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice small. I almost said no. After everything she'd done, she didn't deserve my time or my compassion. But some part of me, the part that Dad had nurtured, the part that still believed in grace, opened the door. We sat in my living room, the same space where Mom had visited. Charlotte looked around at my modest apartment, my second-hand furniture, my art prints on the walls. "I'm going to prison," she said finally. "The DA is charging me with fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. My lawyer says I'm looking at 18 to 24 months minimum." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, Charlotte was still my sister. "No, you're not," Charlotte said without bitterness. "You shouldn't be. I did this to myself." She looked at me directly. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen because I'll probably never get another chance to say it." I nodded. "I have been jealous of you my entire life," Charlotte said. "Not because of anything you did, but because of who you are. You were always the good one, the sweet one, the one Dad loved best. I could see it in the way he looked at you, the way he talked about you. And I hated you for it." "Charlotte, let me finish," she said. "I spent my whole life trying to be perfect, trying to achieve enough, earn enough, be impressive enough to get even a fraction of the love Dad gave you so easily. But nothing I did was ever enough. So I convinced myself that I was better than you, more successful, more sophisticated, more important. I built my entire identity around being superior to you in every measurable way. And then Dad died and left you the beach house, the one thing he loved most besides us, and it destroyed the narrative I'd built." Tears were streaming down her face now. "So I tried to take it from you, not because I wanted the house or even the money, although that was part of it, but because I couldn't accept that Dad had chosen you over me. I couldn't accept that after everything I'd achieved, everything I'd become, you were still the daughter he trusted with his legacy." "He loved you too," I said softly. "He just showed it differently." "Maybe," Charlotte said. "Or maybe he just didn't like me very much. I wouldn't blame him. I don't like me very much either." She wiped her eyes. "I'm going to plead guilty. My lawyer thinks I can get a lighter sentence with a guilty plea and cooperation. Gregory filed for divorce. He's taking the kids. Mom isn't speaking to me. I've lost everything." "I'm sorry," I said again. Charlotte laughed bitterly. "Stop apologizing. You won, fair and square. You fought for what was yours and you beat me. I'm actually proud of you in a weird way. You finally grew that spine I was sure you'd never find." "I didn't want to beat you, Charlotte. I just wanted what Dad left me." "I know. That's what makes this all so much worse." Charlotte stood up. "I'm going away for a while. After prison, I mean. I'm moving somewhere else, starting over, trying to become someone I can actually stand to be. But before I go, I needed to tell you the truth. Not the version I've been telling everyone else, but the real truth. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about Dad, about what matters in life. You were always the better sister, the better daughter, the better person." She walked to the door, then paused. "Take care of the beach house. Make it something beautiful. Dad would have loved that." Then she left and I never saw her again. Mom tried to reconcile with me after Charlotte went to prison, but the relationship was strained and awkward. We had coffee, occasionally made small talk about weather and work, but the deeper connection I'd always wanted just wasn't there. Eventually, the coffee dates grew further apart and then stopped altogether. I kept the beach house, but I didn't just keep it, I transformed it. With some money I'd saved and a small loan, I renovated the property. I converted 2 of the guest bedrooms into comfortable suites with private bathrooms. I updated the kitchen and living spaces. I created a small art studio in what used to be the garage. Then I partnered with a nonprofit organization that helped women transition out of difficult situations. Domestic violence survivors, women escaping addiction, those recovering from mental health crises, young women aging out of foster care. The Vance House Fellowship provided them with a safe, beautiful place to stay for up to 3 months while they figured out their next steps. The first resident was a woman named Jessica, 32 years old, mother of 2, finally leaving her abusive husband after 15 years. She was terrified, broken, convinced she'd made a terrible mistake. I gave her the best guest room, the one with the view of the ocean, and told her to take all the time she needed. 3 months later, Jessica left with a new job, an apartment of her own, and a court order giving her primary custody of her children. On her last day, she hugged me on the porch and said, "You saved my life. This house saved my life." That was when I knew I'd honored Dad's memory the right way. I also started painting again, really painting, not just dabbling. I converted the studio into a workspace where I could create. I painted the beach, the ocean, the light filtering through the windows of the house. My work got better. Galleries started showing interest. I even sold a few pieces enough to help fund the fellowship program. I met someone too, a kind, quiet man named Marcus who taught literature at the community college. We met at a local art show where I was exhibiting. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, listened when I talked about my process, treated me like I mattered. It was such a foreign feeling that I almost didn't trust it. But Marcus was patient. He didn't push, didn't demand, didn't try to make me into something I wasn't. He just saw me, really saw me the way Dad used to. We took things slow, but eventually he became a permanent fixture in my life and at the beach house. He helped with the fellowship program, teaching creative writing classes to the residents, offering encouragement and support. Life became good. Not perfect, but good, real, honest. About 18 months after Charlotte went to prison, she wrote me a letter. It was the first contact we'd had since that conversation in my apartment. The letter was simple, just a few paragraphs thanking me for not destroying her completely, apologizing again for everything she'd done, and telling me that she was genuinely happy I'd found peace. "I'm working as a paralegal in Portland," she wrote. "It's humbling work for someone who used to run estates and boss people around, but it's honest. I'm seeing a therapist trying to unpack the mess I made of my life. I think about you sometimes, about the beach house, about what you've done with it. Dad would have been so proud. I'm proud too, even though I have no right to be. Take care of yourself, Eleanor. You deserve every bit of happiness you've found." I cried when I read that letter. Not from anger or pain, but from something like closure. Charlotte and I would never be close. We'd never have the sisterly bond that some families enjoyed. But maybe we'd found something else, some kind of peace with the truth of what we were to each other. Mom passed away 2 years after Charlotte went to prison. It was sudden, a massive stroke that killed her before the ambulance arrived. Charlotte was granted compassionate release to attend the funeral. We stood together at the graveside, 2 sisters who barely knew each other anymore, mourning a woman who had never quite known how to love either of us. After the service, Charlotte and I had coffee at a diner near the cemetery. "I'm sorry Mom never figured out how to be a real mother to you," Charlotte said. "For what it's worth, I think she had regrets at the end." "Did she tell you that—" Charlotte shook her head. "No, but she asked about you sometimes when I called her from prison. She wanted to know if you were happy, if the beach house was going well, if you'd found someone. I think she realized too late that she'd thrown away her relationship with the daughter who actually wanted to know her." "It's sad," I said. "All of it, the whole mess." "Yeah," Charlotte agreed, "but you made something beautiful out of the mess. That counts for something." We finished our coffee and said goodbye. I never saw Charlotte again after that day, though we exchanged occasional emails, brief updates about our lives, nothing deep, but nothing hostile either. It was enough. Now, 2 years after that conversation at the diner, I find myself sitting on the beach at sunset watching the waves roll in. Thomas, my golden retriever named after Dad, is curled up beside me. Marcus is up at the house preparing dinner for the 3 women currently in residence. One of them, a young artist named Maya, is doing better than anyone expected. She's already talking about moving out next month, ready to face the world again. The beach house is full of life and hope now. It's full of women finding their strength, their voices, their futures. It's full of laughter and tears and healing. Dad would have loved what I've done with it. He would have been proud. My phone buzzes. It's Daniel, who's become not just my lawyer, but a good friend over these years. "How's my favorite revolutionary doing?" he texts. "Living my best life," I type back. "Thanks for fighting for me." "You fought for yourself," he replies. "I just helped with the paperwork." I look up at the house, at the lights glowing in the windows, at the home I reclaimed and transformed. The beach house represents more than property to me now. It's proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I was loved by the one person whose opinion truly counted. It's proof that I had the strength to fight back when everything in my conditioning told me to stay quiet and accept my place. It's proof that I could take something broken and make it beautiful again. Standing up, I brush the sand off my jeans. Thomas jumps up beside me, tail wagging. We walk back to the house together, and I feel something I'd never felt before in my life. I feel at home. Not just in a place, but in myself. I feel complete. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything played out, if I wish I'd found a way to reconcile with Charlotte and Mom while keeping the peace. The answer is always no. Because the truth is, there was no peace to keep. There was only silence and submission, and I'd spent my entire life drowning in both. What I learned through all of this is that sometimes the most radical act of self-love is refusing to make yourself smaller for people who will never appreciate your full size. Sometimes standing up for yourself means burning bridges, facing conflict, enduring hatred and misunderstanding. And that's okay. That's necessary. Because you can't build a new life while still living in the wreckage of the old one. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family or had to fight for your place in the world, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? How did you find the courage to stand up? Hit that like button if Eleanor's story moved you, and subscribe, because everyone deserves to know that it's never too late to reclaim your story and rewrite your ending.